Okay, so you might be wondering, why should I take the time to learn to identify butterflies? And I believe it's the first step in creating a caring and respectful relationship with these non-human neighbors. We need to know their names before we can know their needs. And so before I get into the slides, I want to give you some, demonstrate some equipment that will help you to see the butterflies, because you can't identify them unless you can see them really clearly. So right here, this is the size of many of our local butterflies. Okay, you probably can't even see it from where you're sitting. If you see a butterfly that's sitting still, you want to move up to it slowly. You don't want to make sudden movements or it'll fly away. And you want to make sure your shadow doesn't cross over it. So be aware of where the sun is. And then, but if you get too close, you're going to scare them. So using binoculars is really helpful. But a lot of bird binoculars won't focus close enough. You need binoculars that focus at least 5 feet minimum. And these are made especially for butterflies. They're called the Pentax Papilio 2, and they will focus at 18 inches. So that means I'm like here looking at that butterfly, and it fills up the entire field of view, so I can see all the details of it. And if you had to be 5 feet away, you're not going to see all the details. So I really think those are great. Also, some people have close focus cameras that can do the same thing. But sometimes the butterfly doesn't want to land, it's just flying around and you can't get a good look at it. So then you might use a net. And when you use a net, you want to make sure and catch it on the first swing, because if you miss, they're going to zoom out of here and be gone and never see them again. So I'm going to demonstrate with a maple seed. Okay, so you want to catch it in the air, and then you hold it tight so they can't get away. And then you have a clear vial with a loose lid on it, and you slide that in with your other hand, holding the net, and then you get the butter. Of course, this butterfly is easy to get into the vial because it's not moving. Anyway, you get that into your vial. Come on, cooperate there. Slide the lid on while you're still in the net, and then you pull it out, and then you can get a close look at it, maybe take a picture, figure out what it is, and then let it go. So these are just some techniques that you can use to get a close look at your butterflies. So now we'll start the slides.
Before watching the rest of this video, please download and print the handout linked below so you can refer to it as we go along. All the good quality photos in this presentation were taken by Rick Ahrens, Lori Humphreys, Sue Anderson, and Neil Bjorklund, and they also reviewed the content for accuracy. Thanks also to Jim Blick for technical assistance. When I started the Eugene Butterfly Count in 1991, there were no regional field guides. Now we have many choices. These are the best books. The Butterflies of Lane County, which was printed in 2013. This is printed by the Lane County Butterfly Club, and it's pocket size. It has lots of info. It's available at local stores, or you can email us to get a copy. If you want to go a little bit farther afield than Lane County, you can get The Butterflies of the Pacific Northwest by Bob Pyle, our regional expert. It was printed in 2018 and covers all of Washington and Oregon. If you have an internet connection when you're looking at butterflies, you can go to Butterflies of Oregon website by Neil Bjorklund, who was one of our founding officers. It covers all the Oregon species, and he's making it into a book soon. Also useful are the books Butterflies Through Binoculars, the West, which was written by the founder of NABA, Jeffrey Glassberg, covers the 12 western states, but it was printed in 2001, so it's a bit dated. The Kaufman Field Guide to Butterflies of North America covers all of the US, Canada, and Mexico. It's compact and easy to use, but it was printed in 2003, so it's somewhat dated. And of course, it will have a lot more species of butterflies than what we have just here in Oregon. All right, how do we monitor butterfly populations? Well, we do what's called the 4th of July butterfly count. And this is similar to the Christmas bird counts that are done by the Audubon Society. The 4th of July butterfly counts are organized by NABA National. There's 450 counts all over the country, and each one has a 15-mile diameter circle and is held in about the same week each year. Our club organizes 4 counts, and in the year 2024, those counts are going to be held on June 29th for the Ochiko count, July 6th for the Eugene count, July 13th for the Metolius count, and July 20th for the Browder Ridge count. You can check our website for more information and online registration if you want to participate. So this talk will cover the Eugene count, and our other video will cover the butterflies found on the other 3 counts in the mountains. Here's a map of the Eugene count circle. We split into 4 groups and cover these 4 areas. Each group walks 3 to 5 miles and counts for 3 to 5 hours. In the past, we have also counted in other areas of the circle. Since so many people live in this circle, we will also have garden watchers for this count, where you stay home and count butterflies in your garden and then report the results. We need more trained people to help out, so that's partly why I'm doing this slideshow. The purpose of the count is to document long-term trends in butterfly populations. Here you can see a graph of the data for the past 24 years for the 25 most common species, where each line is one species, and the circle size shows how many we counted that year. We will be putting these graphs and information on our website so that everyone can see what's happening with our butterfly populations. When you first start learning butterfly names, I suggest you learn common names first, not scientific names. Just like people names, butterfly common names are usually 2 words, what I call the first name and the last name. Here are some examples of first and last names of butterflies common on our count. When you are a beginner, start by learning the last names, which tells you the group that a butterfly is in, usually their family or subfamily. Then try to learn the first names, which tell you the species. In this presentation, I will be covering 46 species, but there's only 21 last names to learn. As a beginner, it's also helpful to start by learning the butterflies in a limited area and at a limited flight time, which is exactly what we are doing here. The first thing when learning to identify butterflies is to make sure you can tell butterflies from moths. You might think that all butterflies are bright colored and fly in the daytime, while all moths are dull colored and fly at night, but not true. So how do you tell? If the wings are held upright over the body like this, and it has knobs on the end of the antenna, where the red arrow is, then it is a butterfly, no matter what the color. But a few moths can sometimes hold their wings up, and antenna knobs can be hard to see. So I want to show you some colorful day-flying local moths. This is a cinnabar moth, which is quite common, but we have no local butterflies of this color. This is a tiger moth. We have no local butterflies of this color and pattern. If the wings are held 2 up and 2 out, it is a butterfly, specifically a skipper. Only skippers land this way, so I call it the skipper pose. One important characteristic that gets lost when using photos to identify butterflies is size. Most photos don't have a reference for size, so it can be confusing. I made this poster using the life-size butterfly silhouettes in the Glassberg and Kaufman field guides. Using the wingspan measurements given in our pocket guide, I have sorted out our 46 butterfly species into 5 size categories, which are represented by common household objects of which you should already have a size concept. For extra large butterflies, think of a recipe card or a 3x5 index card. For large butterflies, think of a playing card. For medium butterflies, think of a credit card. For small butterflies, think of a book of matches. And for tiny butterflies, think of a postage stamp. In each category, the butterflies would fit comfortably on that object with their wings out without going over the edges. But if you put them into the next smallest category, they would go over the edges. Some of the silhouettes are of butterflies with the wings together, like these here, and these, and these. And so in that case, you could double the size of the silhouette to show how big they are with the wings out. Now, each species actually comes in a range of sizes, so these categories are approximate, and credit cards are actually a bit too large for medium, while postage stamps come in various sizes, but I think these categories will still be helpful. Each of my slides with only one species on it has a size reference in the upper right corner. Each of my slides with more than one species has them in relative sizes to each other. So now if we combine the size categories with color categories, we get this chart which shows all 46 species. You don't need to be able to read this slide because you have the same information on your handout. Color over here refers to the dominant color that you see when the butterfly is flying or has landed with its wings out. So it is not referring to the color on the undersides of the wings, which may be different. Butterflies listed in two places on the chart, such as the Great Spangled Fritillary, means that they have different colors for males and females. So just like with the sizes, again, these color categories are approximate because butterflies can vary in color within species, but I think the categories are still useful. Also note that on the back side of your handout, or page 2 if you printed it one-sided, there are some details about comparing similar species within the same color size group, and I will be referring to those as we go along. I'm going to go through one color at a time, from extra large to tiny, one slide per species, plus comparison slides for similar species, and then we'll have a quiz. Also note that on your handout, typeface indicates relative abundance. Bold type is common, regular type is uncommon, and italics are rare. This refers to the week around the 4th of July only, since some species are more common earlier and some are more common later, and other local species just never fly around the 4th of July. All right, so now I'm ready to introduce you to your butterfly neighbors. Starting with the white, off-white, or cream-colored butterflies, in the extra large category, we have the pale swallowtail. Like all swallowtails, has long tails on the hind wing, and this swallowtail is whitish cream colored with very wide black bars, so that the black bars are wider than the cream colored bars on either side. It looks pretty much the same on the underside. Later we will compare it to all the other swallowtails. In the large size of white butterflies, we have the Claudius parnassian. Parnassians are translucent white with gray markings and red dots. Claudius is the only parnassian on this count, so it's very distinctive. In the medium white butterfly category, we have the mustard white, which is also known as the margined white. And it has no markings except that it has some darkened veins, which are kind of fuzzy, and sometimes it doesn't even have that. But it has no markings around the tip or the edges of the forewings. Okay, the next butterfly The next butterfly in the medium white category is the cabbage white. And the cabbage white does have some dark tips on the forewing, but the more distinctive thing are these black dots in the middle of the wings, 2 in the males and 4 in the females. And you can also see at least one of the dots from the underside, and the underside is kind of yellowish. So this is our only European butterfly, and it's pretty much only found around crops in the cabbage family, such as cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, things like that. So it's pretty much only found in town around vegetable gardens or at farms. So you're not really going to find it in the natural places where we do the butterfly count. The next medium-sized white butterfly is called the western white. And this one has much more dark markings along the tip and the edges of the forewing. And on the underside, it's got kind of yellowish outlines of the veins. The next medium-sized white butterfly is the pine white. And this one has much more dark outlines on the forewing, edge of the forewing. And the underside has black on the veins, which is very distinctive on the female here. Pine whites are found sometimes when they're laying their eggs, they're up high in conifer trees. That's why they're called pine whites. And then we have the white version of the orange sulfur, which is a female. Not all females of the orange sulfur are white, but some of them are. And if you could see the top side of the wing, which you can't see in this picture, but you can kind of see it through the wing, there's a black border on both the hind wing and the forewing. And what you see underneath is this very obvious white spot that's got dark edges, okay? And so that's very distinctive. So now we're going to compare all the medium whites, and this is summarized on the back side of your handout. So in the top row here, we have the ones with very little markings on the edge of their wings. The mustard white has no markings on the edge of the forewing. The cabbage has just a little bit of black, but it also has this obvious black spot in the middle of the wing. And then the bottom row, we have more and more markings on the edge of the front wing. And on the western white, those markings are sort of triangles next to each other, which kind of form a W for western. On the pine white, they're more looped and enclosed, so you can form a P out of the markings for pine white. And then the orange sulfur actually has dark markings all over the borders of both the front and the hind wing, if you could see it with the wings open. But on the underside, it's got this nice O for orange. So that's how you tell the medium whites apart. So now we're in the category of small whites, and this is the common ringlet, which doesn't look white underneath. It looks sort of orangish brown, but when it flies, it is kind of a creamy white above usually, and it hardly ever lands with its wings open, which is why I can't show it to you. This is actually a very common species. It's the third most common species on our butterfly count. Okay, now we're in the category of yellow butterflies. Starting in the extra large category, we have the western tiger swallowtail. This is our second most common species on the butterfly count. And like the other swallowtails, it's got the long tails on the hind wing. But the bars, the black bars, are either equal width to the yellow stripes, or they might even be narrower than the yellow stripes. All right, and if you have a yellow butterfly in the large category, we have the anise swallowtail. And the anise swallowtail has a lot of black along the front edge of the front wing. So let's look at all the swallowtails. Look at all the swallowtails together now. If you first, when you see a swallowtail, you want to look at the front edge of the front wing. If there's a lot of black there, It's and a swallowtail. If there's thick black bars that are thicker than the areas of light color, then it's a pale swallowtail. And if the black bars are equal width to the pale areas or narrower, then it is a western tiger. Now you also could go by the color, but sometimes it's a little hard to tell them apart, the pale and the western tiger. So that's why you want to look for the width of the black bars. Okay, now we're into the medium-sized yellow butterflies, and there's only one. Now it's called the orange sulfur, which you might think it goes in the orange category. Really, when you look at it, it's yellow. It's only called orange sulfur because it's more orange than other sulfurs. But in this count, we only have one sulfur, so that makes it easy. And like I said, when we looked at the white female, it has dark borders. Here you can see it on this one with the wings open. Dark borders on both the front wing and the back wing. And then on the underside, just like the female, it's got this nice obvious O for orange. So this is a pretty distinctive butterfly. You won't get it mixed up with anything else on this count. Okay, now we're into the orange butterflies, and starting with the extra large size, we have the monarch, which is dark orange with black veins and edges and small white spots. There is nothing similar to a monarch on our butterfly count. In the large category of orange butterflies, we have the great spangled fritillary male. And you can see it's a lighter orange than the monarch with black bars and spots, no white spots on the top. And underneath, it has these silvery white spangles on the hind wing. So it would be very easy to tell this butterfly, except that we also have another fritillary that could be found on the count, and this is in the medium size of orange butterflies called the Hydaspes fritillary. And so since they're pretty similar looking, let's put them next to each other and compare. That the great spangled is bigger and has fewer markings and smaller markings than the Hydaspes. So that would be how you would tell them apart. Also in the medium orange size category, we have the satyr comma. And it is named for this white mark on the underside of the wing that looks like a comma. Satyr commas, or commas in general, are also called angle wings because look at the edges of the wings, how jagged they are. They're just very, very jagged. And but this is the only comma that we have on this count, so that makes it easier. It looks kind of like a dead leaf on the bottom, and on the top it's very orange with lots of dark spots and dark edges on the wings. Another medium orange butterfly is kind of similar to the satyr comma, but it has fewer dark spots, much thicker black borders, and the wings aren't so jagged. You can see the wing edge here on this underside is jagged, but not like the angle wing or comma butterfly. And there's no white comma on it. So that's how you tell those apart. Another medium-sized orange butterfly is the painted lady. And the painted lady would be easy to identify, except that we also have two other ladies. So we have to look closely. And the thing to look at is this bar right here, which is white. You see it on the top and on the bottom. And then you have 5 spots on the underside of the hind wing. Here is another medium-sized orange butterfly, the American lady. So just like the painted lady, it's got a white bar here, but it has this white dot here, which the painted lady doesn't have. You can also see it on the underside. But the more obvious thing is it only has 2 spots here on the hind wing on the underside. And on the top side, the spots kind of run together. We'll do a comparison later and see that better. And then we have the West Coast lady. It's also in the medium orange category. And the West Coast lady has orange, where the other ones have white, and on the underside it looks tan. So you can remember it because on the West Coast, the ladies go to the beach and they get tan. All right, so let's look at all the medium orange butterflies together, and this is on the back side of your handout. When you first see a medium-sized orange butterfly, you want to look at the edge of the wing. Is it jagged? If it's really jagged, you know you've got a satyr comma. If it's not so jagged and it's very dark on the edge of the wing and not so many black spots, then it's a California tortoiseshell. If it's smooth on the edge of the wing and you have lots of spots and bars and markings all over but no black border, then it's a Hydaspes fritillary. If it on the tip of the forewing has got dark with white spots, you can see they all have that, then it's a lady. So then you look at the next mark over, this mark here. If it's white, it's one of these two. If it's orange, you know it's a West Coast lady. So now to tell these two apart, you could look for that little dot right here. That's where that blue arrow is pointing at, but that's hard to see. It's better to look at how these spots all run together on the hind wing, and here they're distinctive spots. Also, just from a distance, this one looks a lot more orange here, and this one has a lot more markings in here. So the American lady is more orange, has the spots running together. The painted lady is more marked. So now we'll look at the underside, which I think is actually easier for telling them apart, because the satyr comma has that white comma, and both of these look like a dead leaf, but this one's darker and has no white comma. The California tortoiseshell, no white comma. For the ladies, again, you look for that bar on the front wing. If it's white, you know it's either painted or American. If it's tan, you know it's a West Coast lady. And then between these two, you look at the number of spots on the hind wing. If there's 5 spots, it's a painted lady. If there's 2 spots, it's an American lady. And you also can look for that white spot on the American lady. All right, so that's it for the medium-sized orange butterflies. So now we're into the small-sized orange butterflies. And this is the Melita crescent. Here you can see it compared to the size of a honeybee. So it's bright orange with wavy dark markings and spots, and it's not a skipper. You'll see in a minute what the skippers look like. There is one other crescent that we'll get to in a different color category, and when we get there we'll compare the two crescents. All right, so the skippers, all skippers have kind of fat bodies compared to the size of the wings. The wings are very triangular, and they do that skipper pose where they have 2 wings out and 2 wings up. This is the sachem skipper, usually just called the sachem for some reason, but I'm trying to teach you last names, so I'm calling it the sachem skipper. And on the top side, it has this very dark spot in the middle of the forewing that doesn't connect to the dark border. On the underside, it's got these lighter spots that form a V. When we get to the end of the skippers, we'll put them all next to each other and compare them. Also in the small orange size, we have the Juba skipper, which is similar to the sachem, with a dark spot here that doesn't connect to the border, but the border is very jagged and has these lighter spots near the tip. And on the underside, these lighter markings are very contrast to the background and very irregular shaped with lots of points on them, very jagged. So that's the Juba skipper. Now the Sonora skipper, also known as the Sonoran skipper, is darker than the other orange skippers, almost more brown than orange. And on the underside, the light markings make the letter C. So that's different. And finally, we have the woodland skipper, which on the top side has a dark diagonal line which connects to the dark border like that. And on the underside, the light markings line up along parallel to the edge of the wing, kind of like the letter I if it's in the right position. And now we'll compare all the orange skippers together. I think it's easier to tell them apart from the underside. This is also summarized on the back side of your handout. So if the light markings on the underside form the letter V, then it's a sachem. If they form the letter C, then it's a sonora or sonoran. And if they form the letter I, then it's a woodland. If they don't form a letter, but they're very high contrast and jagged, then it's a juba skipper. From the top side, you look and see it does have this dark spot that's not connected to the border, and the border's pretty solid, then it's a sachem. If it has that dark spot not connected, but the border's very jagged and some lighter spots in it, that's the juba. If overall the butterfly is almost more brown than orange, lots of darkness, and it's a sonora. And if it has a dark diagonal line that connects to the dark border, that's a woodland. And also, these two on the right are in the tiny size, and these two on the left are in the small size. So there's that little bit of size difference. Okay, so now we're into the light brown or medium brown category, and we have no extra large or large butterflies in this color, but we do have a medium size brown butterfly, and that's the great copper. Now, great means it's bigger than other coppers, but we don't have any other coppers in this count, so that makes it somewhat easy. It's sort of grayish brown on top with orange edges along the hind wing, and you can also see those from the underside, which is kind of more of a grayish white with dark spots. So I was the one who found the first great copper in this area. It was the first one found in the Willamette Valley since 1970, and the first one in Lane County since 1954. I found it in 2004 on our butterfly count, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was something I hadn't seen before. And as I was describing it to people, I said it was like a giant female blue, because we haven't gotten to the blues yet, but the male blues are blue and the female blues are brown or gray. And you can see how the underside looks a lot like one of these blues, except it's so much bigger. Anyway, thanks to the West Eugene wetlands restoration, we now see great coppers almost every year. All right, another medium-sized brown butterfly is the common buckeye. And on the top side, it's very distinctive because it has these 6 eye spots, these orange bars, orange edges on the hind wing. On the underside, it's a little more nondescript, but the only thing you could confuse it with is the common wood nymph. And the common wood nymph has 2 eye spots that you can see from underneath, and the common buckeye only has 1. Plus, you can still see some of these markings from the underside, which you wouldn't see on a common wood nymph. Plus, a common buckeye is not common on our count. All right, now we're into the small brown butterflies, and this is the Propertius duskywing, which is grayish brown on top with white markings, and the forewings, and the hind wings very brown. And the underside very kind of similar. It would be easy to identify, except that we also have another duskywing, which is the Perseus duskywing, which is very similar but with fewer markings, and it's smaller. So let's put them next to each other and compare them. On the left we have both the female and the male of the Propertius duskywing. The female has more white markings, which is quite different than the Perseus. But the male Propertius and the Perseus look kind of similar, but different sizes. So the Purpurtius is much more common on our butterfly count. Okay, and now another small brown butterfly is the field crescent. And it has, the uppers are brown with orange and cream markings, and then on the underside, it's very orange. So if you remember, we had another crescent that we already went through, so let's put them next to each other. So here are both of the crescents. The Melita crescent usually is very orange like this, but it can be somewhat more brownish, but it's still, you can say this butterfly is more orange than brown, whereas this butterfly is more brown than orange. On the underside, they're quite more different, I'd say, because the Melita crescent is more marbled and it has this light colored crescent mark right there, and the field crescent does not, and it's more just kind of solid orange. All right, another small brown butterfly is a dun skipper. So you know right away that this is a skipper because it's in the skipper pose, but you can see there's no real markings. It's just brown all over. So that's very distinctive skipper. You won't mix it up with anything else on this count. In the tiny brown category, we have the Arctic skipper, which is brown with distinct a checkerboard of golden orange spots, and the underside is orange with silvery white spots. So if you see it on the top side, that's very distinctive. If you see the underside, you might think of another skipper. The Juba skipper also has very prominent white, silvery white spots, but you can see, first of all, the Juba skipper is bigger, and the spots on the Juba skipper are very jagged edges, whereas these spots on the Arctic skipper are more rounded or square. Okay, another tiny brown butterfly is a sylvan hairstreak. And we're looking at it here on the underside, so it doesn't look brown. The underside is more gray, but the top side is brown. Hairstreaks in general have these long, well, not so long, but they have these tails on the hind wing, which is distinctive. And they as all the ones in their group, have striped antennas and cute little faces. The sylvan has a little orange spot here by the tails and also a light blue spot, and then it has a series of dark spots. So we'll compare that to another hairstreak, the juniper hairstreak. Again, it's in the tiny category of brown. It has little tails on the hind wing, and the underside, which you see here, is more of a kind of orangish brown, and it has a white line that kind of wavers across. It's more obvious in this picture, a white line. Okay. It's also known as a cedar hairstreak because it lays eggs on either cedars or junipers. All right, the hedgerow hairstreak is also in the tiny brown category, and like the other hairstreaks, it has tails on the hind wing. This one has a kind of a wavery black line crossing over the wings. When we get to the end of all the hairstreaks, we will compare them. The last one is in a different color category. And the final tiny brown butterfly is the Acmon blue female. The females are brown with an orange band on the back of the hind wing. You can see it from underneath and from on top. So the brown is on top, and underneath they're kind of grayish white with black spots, but this orange band is very distinctive. Okay, so now we're in the dark brown, dark gray, or black category. We'll just call it dark. And in the extra large size, we have the mourning cloak. It's dark wings with light edges, and that you see that on both the underside and the top side. And on the top side you can also see these blue spots. Another extra large dark butterfly is the California sister. Dark brown with these white diagonal markings and these very prominent orange tips on the forewings, which you also see from the underside. In the large size category of dark, we have the Lorquin's Admiral, which you can see is very similar to the California sister with the dark and the white diagonal lines, but the orange tips are much smaller, less well defined, and you don't even see them on the underside. So let's put those next to each other, and you can see how the California sister is larger and it has these very prominent, well-defined orange tips. You see them on the underside too, whereas these orange tips are sometimes faded, they're much smaller, they're less well defined, and you don't see them on the underside. Also in the large dark category, we have the great spangled fritillary female. Looks very different from the male on top because it's dark with light edges. On the underside, it's got these silvery white spangles, just like the male. So let's say you see wings dark with light edges flying by. What could it be? Well, the most common thing it could be on our count is actually the bandwing grasshopper. See how this wing looks very much like the mourning cloak and somewhat like the great spangled fritillary female. So if you see a dark wing with light edges flying by and then it suddenly disappears, it could very well be a bandwing grasshopper because this is their hind wing, which folds up like a fan and fits underneath this front wing, which is camouflaged. So once they land, you don't see that wing anymore and it seems like they've disappeared. So we don't really want to be counting grasshoppers as butterflies, and this grasshopper is much more common than these two butterflies, so I just wanted to point that out. In the medium-sized dark category, we have the snowberry checker spot, and it is dark with cream-colored spots and dark orange spots too, and on the underside it's very orange with cream-colored spots and lines. So it's the only checker spot on our count, which makes it easy because in the mountains there's a lot of checker spots and they're hard to tell apart. But this one is pretty easy. The only thing it looks like, maybe, is a field crescent. So if you see something with dark wings and many spots, you should think about if it's a field crescent or a checker spot. The checker spot is much bigger. It has darker orange markings. It has none of these O-shaped markings where it's orange with a dark middle. It's just darker overall and bigger overall. So I think they're pretty distinctive, but I wanted to show you a comparison. Okay, also in the medium-sized dark category, we have the common wood nymph. And this is the most common butterfly on our count. And when we see them, they usually look dark like this. That's why I put them in the dark category. But as you can see from these photos, they can be medium brown. The only thing you could mix them up with would be the common buckeye. And like I said before, the common buckeye, when you look on the underside, you only see one eye spot here. And the common buckeye is never this dark either. So if you see a lighter brown wood nymph, you see those two spots and you wouldn't see that. Plus the buckeye also has these orange bars here. So common wood nymph. Okay, another medium-sized dark butterfly is the red admiral. It's dark with red-orange lines across the forewings and along the back of the hind wings. It's very distinctive when you see it on top. When you see it underneath, it kind of looks like a West Coast lady, except it's got a white bar here and the West Coast lady has a tan bar there. But they are related, as you can see by these wingtips. They kind of look like the ladies, but otherwise it looks very different. Another medium-sized dark butterfly is the silver-spotted skipper. So you can tell it's a skipper because it's got this fat body and these triangular wings, but it's really big for a skipper. And it has this very distinctive silvery white, large silvery white spot on the hind wing. So you're not going to mix it up with any other skipper. Okay, so now we're into the gray color category, and there are no extra large, large, or medium gray butterflies. So we're in the small size of gray butterflies, and this is the gray hairstreak. And remember that hairstreaks always have these tails on their hind wing, and the gray hairstreak has this very prominent orange spot by the tails, and then it has these dark lines going across the wings. You can see that orange spot from the top or from the bottom. And now we've gone through all the hairstreaks. We'll compare all the hairstreaks on the count. So like I said, the gray is in the small category and the other three are in the tiny category. So that's one difference. The gray looks somewhat like the sylvan, but the orange spot is much more prominent. You hardly even notice the orange spot on the sylvan. Also, these spots make more of a line and these are more distinctive spots. The juniper is orange colored underneath and has a white line, whereas the hedgerow is grayish underneath, has a black line. All right, so that was the hairstreaks. Okay, now we're into the tiny category of gray butterflies, and this is the common checkered skipper. It is the only checkered skipper on the count, which makes it easier because it's very distinctive, gray with a lot of checkery white markings both on the top and on the underside. And again in the tiny gray category, we have the eastern tailed blue female. The females have the upper side slate gray and gray brown, possibly shot with blue, and the underside is gray with black spots and the small orange dot near the tail. Now, not all blues have tails, but the eastern tail blue and the western tail blue have tails. And that kind of reminds you of hairstreaks, right? So what hairstreak looks most like this? It's the sylvan. So I put them next to each other. They're both brownish on top, but if you see a bluish cast to the top side, then you know it's a eastern tailed blue female. On the underside, the sylvan hairstreak has these spots that line up to make kind of a letter C, whereas the spots over here are just sort of scattered around. The other thing is this sylvan hairstreak has a light blue spot underneath that is not that obvious, so you might not notice that. And also it's a little bit bigger, but okay, so that's how you tell those two apart. So now we're into the color category blue, and all of the butterflies in this category are tiny, and they all have the last name blue. And most of them are males, but this one is the eastern tail blue male. We just saw the female, and so the top side is very blue, little tiny tails, a little bit of orange by the tail, and scattered black dots underneath. The western tail blue male is also blue on the top, little tiny tails, hardly any markings underneath. So when we get to the end of the blues, we'll compare them all next to each other. The Echo Azure blue used to be a subspecies of the spring azure, and so you'll see that in the older books. But now Echo Azure is its own species, and most people just call it Echo Azure, but I'm trying to teach you last names, so I'm calling it the Echo Azure blue. And so it's blue on top. Both the males and females are blue on top, although the males are brighter blue. And no tails, no orange spots. So that's how you can tell that one for this count, at least. There are a lot of other blues that are found in other places, but for our count, we just have 4. And then we have the Ackman blue male, which is blue on top, has orange border on the hind wing. So let's put them all together. All the blues. If you see a blue butterfly, the first thing you try to see is, does it have orange along the back edge of the wing? All along the back edge. Then it's Ackman. If it doesn't have any orange and it doesn't have a tail, then it's the Echo Azure. If it has a tail, well, it might have a little bit of orange. And then it's Eastern tail blue and more prominent black spots. If it has hardly any markings, then it's Western tailed. We actually find the Eastern tailed is the most common blue in the Eugene butterfly count. All right, and now it's time for a quiz. So I want you to get out a piece of paper, and for each, there's going to be 30 questions. For each one, write down the number, write down the last name, even if you don't know the first name. Use your handout to help you. I'll have more than one slide for most of these questions so that you can try to get it at first without any clues, and then I'll zoom in and give you some clues on the next slide so that it'll make it a little easier. And be sure and pause the video if I'm going too fast. Okay, here's number 1 with no clues. And here's number 1 with a size clue. Here's number 2 with no clues. And here's number 2 with a size clue. Here's number 3, and this one I didn't think you needed any clues, so it's just the one slide. And here's number 4, also just the one slide for number 4. And here's number 5, also just the one slide for number 5. And here's number 6 with no clues. And here's number 6 with a size clue. Here's number 7 with no clues. Here's number 7 with a size clue. Here's number 8 with no clues. And here's number 8 with a size clue. And here's number 9 with no clues. And here's number 9 with a size clue. Here's number 10. Now we're getting more realistic, like you're really out in the field looking for butterflies and you can barely spot them from a distance. But even from this distance, you might be able to tell what it is. And now here's a close-up with a size clue. Now, when you find butterflies in the field, they don't always look pristine like the pictures I've been showing you so far. This one has had a run-in with a bird, but it still has enough of its wings and its markings for you to tell what it is. And the same thing here. This butterfly is quite beat up, but it still has enough of its wings and its markings so you can tell what it is. And here's one more beat up butterfly, first with no clues, and then with a size clue and an arrow clue. Now sometimes you see a butterfly and you get your binoculars up to your eyes, but you don't have time to get them focused before the butterfly takes off and you've lost it. But you can tell what this butterfly is even though it's out of focus. And the same thing here. You could tell what this is even though it's out of focus, but we will give you an arrow clue and a size clue also. And number 16, also pretty much out of focus. Just to orient you, this is an orange zinnia flower, and the butterfly is right here, sitting with its wings together. But let's give you a zoom in and a size clue. Okay. Number 17, from a distance, kind of camouflaged, but you could still figure out that if you look closely. And then we'll show it to you a little closer with a arrow clue and a size clue. Number 18, from a bit of a distance, and then 18 closer up with a size clue. Number 19 from a bit of a distance, and then 19 closer up with a size clue. Number 20, these are all the same kind of butterfly. See if you can figure out from a distance. And then we'll look at them closer up and have a size clue. All right, number 21 from a bit of a distance. And closer up with a size clue. All right, the butterfly here is not in the middle, but you can probably see it and even tell what it is from this distance. But then we'll go closer and give you a size clue also. This picture has 3 different kinds of butterflies in it. See if you can figure out what they are without going closer. And then we'll zoom in on number 23 zoomed in with a size clue. Number 24 and 25 zoomed in with a size clue. All right, here's a butterfly on the marigolds. See if you can get it from this distance. Now we'll zoom in a bit and see if you can get it now. And 27 without any clues. And now we'll go closer and give you a size clue. 28 in the distance, and then 28 zoomed in with a size clue. 29 from a distance, and then 29 zoomed in with a size clue. Can you see the butterfly in this picture? Well, let's zoom in. Now can you see it? And here's a size clue also. It's still hard to see, so we'll zoom in one more time, and you can see, oh, it has shadows going across it. That's why it was so hard to see. Okay, that was the last one. So now we're going to go through with the answers. Number 1 is a small orange butterfly that's not a skipper, so it's a Melita crescent. Number 2 is doing the skipper pose, and it's brown with no markings, so it is the dun skipper. Number 3, it's yellow, it's medium size, it has dark edges, and it has an O for orange sulfur on the bottom wing. Number 4, large size yellow with dark markings on the edge of the front wing is the anise swallowtail. Number 5, white with black spots in the middle of the wing is the cabbage white. Number 6, medium-sized brown with 2 eye spots is the common wood nymph. Number 7, large white with red spots is the Claudius Parnassian. Number 8, tiny orange with C on the bottom of the bottom wing is the Sonora skipper. Number 9, tiny orange with I on the underside of the hind wing is the woodland skipper. Number 10, small orange with a V on the underside of the hind wing is the sachem skipper. Number 11, yellow with the black bars being the same thickness or narrower than the yellow bars is the western tiger swallowtail. Number 12, medium-sized orange with white bars and lots of dark markings is the painted lady. Number 13, tiny brown with a little bit of blue and a tail is the eastern tail blue female. Number 14, dark with prominent orange tips is the California sister. Number 15, gray, small, with prominent orange spot is the gray hairstreak. Number 16, orange, extra large, could only be the monarch. Number 17, orange, the top side is orange. Medium size with a white comma is a satyr comma. Number 18, brown, small, with lots of spots is the field crescent. Number 19, small, cream colored is the common ringlet. Number 20, tiny, it's a blue with no tail and no orange, so it's an echo azure blue. Number 21, it's got a tail, so it's a hair streak. It's orange on the underside, so it's a juniper or cedar hair streak. 22, dark with not prominent orange tips, kind of faded orange tips. It's a Lorquin's Admiral. Dark medium with orangish reddish stripes is the Red Admiral. Orange medium with dark edges and not too jagged edges is the California tortoiseshell. Medium orange with that orange bar is the West Coast lady. Okay, this is extra large, cream colored, but really notice how thick those black bars are. So it's the pale swallowtail. Medium sized brown, looks like a giant blue, is the great copper. Tiny gray is the common checker skipper. Medium-sized orange with the spots all running together down there and a white bar is the American lady. And finally, small, brown, white markings, Propertius dusky wing. All right, so that's the end of our slideshow. I hope that you go back through it and review the parts that you got wrong on the quiz so you can learn these butterflies and be a good neighbor to them. Thank you.